I don't want that fake mother at our wedding. Damn old hag. As he slammed the dish onto the table, he yelled angrily at me. I had lost my husband in the past and remarried a year ago. My new husband had a 27-year-old son, Ryan. Since he was getting married, I, who had saved up a considerable amount of money, supported all the expenses for the wedding venue. Of course, I intended to attend the wedding, but just before the event, Ryan vehemently rejected this idea. We lived in different houses from Ryan, maintaining a good distance and living peacefully. Yet, his sudden change left my mind in total chaos. I absolutely hate the idea of some tired old hag who isn't even my real mom showing up as a parent at my wedding. Just the thought of introducing her to my friends makes me sick. The dishes he slammed spilled all over the table, muddying up the dining area. Stop talking like that. And don't waste food. I managed to respond somehow. His words hurt me. I was not recognized as a family member by him. In fact, the reality that he internally mocked me as a tired old hag stabbed at my heart like a knife. To him, I was nothing more than his father's remarried partner, who appeared when he was already an adult. Perhaps it's now difficult to call me a mother. But this rough attitude was too much. You're some big shot at the company, earning a lot, right? You even paid for our wedding. If you've given your money, then I have no more use for you. That's harsh. Indeed, it might be hard to call me a mother. But I want to celebrate the marriage of my stepson. Is that so wrong? I tried to calm down my son with slow and deliberate words. No way. Just having that money-grabbing hag around ruins the whole vibe of the ceremony. However, my son resolutely refused. There was no turning back. The meal I had prepared with care today, knowing he would come, was all ruined. I gritted my teeth, holding back tears while my head swirled with rejection and the bitterness of being called a money source. So, you really hate it that much? I understand. I won't go to the wedding. Congratulations on your wedding. As I weakly cleaned up the spilled meal, that was all I could muster to say. If you understand, that's fine. He spat out those words and left. As I wiped the table, head bowed, I couldn't suppress a slow smile forming at my lips. My smartphone in my pocket rang. After making sure Ryan was out of sight, I picked up the smartphone and pressed the call button. Hello. Yes, that's right. No problem. Please proceed as planned. My name is Grace. I am 58 years old and work as a sales department head at a manufacturing company. In my generation, it was extremely difficult for women to build a career. Perhaps even harder than men. Being the first woman to hold a director position at the company, I was viewed with admiration and awe. Even though I had been married once. In my 20s, a salesman from a client company took a liking to me. And after dating, I married him because he was someone I could relax with. We both devoted ourselves to our jobs, and although we were not blessed with children, I thought that if I could live peacefully with my husband, that was happiness. However, 10 years ago, my beloved husband died. He was only 48 and at the peak of his career. Even though we took care of his health at home, we couldn't escape the fate of illness. Crushed by deep grief, I despaired in a world without him. Feeling as if a hole had opened up in my heart. The loneliness and sadness of losing a partner I had been with for over 20 years were unbearable. After that, I threw myself even more into my work. To fill the loneliness, to escape from despair, I worked day and night. Concerns were raised around me, but my efforts were recognized. And I was eventually promoted to the first female director position. 10 years have passed since I lost my husband. The wounds in my heart have somewhat healed, and I continue to forge ahead in my work. As a manager, I am responsible for training subordinates and planning new business ventures. There is a mountain of things to do, the responsibility is heavy, but the fulfillment is great. Amidst these days, I recently became close to a man. His name is Nick, a coworker in my department. He is 55 years old and holds a managerial position as a section chief. He hasn't climbed very high in the company, but he's a cheerful and nice guy. We've had several meals together under the guise of business meetings, during which we began to talk about our private lives. During one such occasion, I confided in him about losing my husband to illness 10 years ago. He listened sympathetically and then shared his own story. Actually, I'm also divorced. 10 years ago, my wife died in a traffic accident. My son is already 27 and independent, and I live alone now. I see. You've been through a lot. It must be tough managing everything at home by yourself. As I said this, he smiled shyly. And as we talked about our lives, we grew closer. His house was near mine, and on my days off, I started bringing over homemade side dishes to his house. And sometimes I would go to his house to help clean. As we spent more time together and at each other's homes, we eventually started dating. He always enjoyed my cooking, thanking me each time, saying, "I really appreciate it. I couldn't make such proper meals on my own." Although he was passive about advancing in his career, he always had a cheerful disposition and seemed to have the spare time to enjoy hobbies, happily discussing his favorite movies and books. Worn out by my demanding job, I always found solace in his carefree demeanor. Nick's son, Ryan, who had become independent, would visit his father's house a few times a year. Although they didn't seem overly affectionate, typical of a father and son, it seemed like they made sure each other was doing well. One day, my visit coincided with Ryan's, and Nick introduced me to his son. "This is the lady I've been seeing. She's been a great help to me living alone, and she's an excellent cook." Blushing a bit, I bowed to his son, who then said, "That's great. If Dad's happy, that's what matters most," and he greeted me with a smile. Although Nick's ex-wife and Ryan's mother had passed away 10 years ago, we were all adults. There was no awkwardness, and we were able to enjoy a meal together, watch TV, and have a pleasant time. That day's dinner included savory teriyaki chicken, a fresh spring cabbage salad that brought out the natural flavors of the ingredients, and fluffy, lightly seasoned omelets. Ryan devoured my cooking with apparent delight. Introducing me to his son was also a step towards considering a future together. We were both in our 50s, which made it somewhat embarrassing. But we were already thinking about marriage. If we could live together from now on, it might actually be quite enjoyable.
Yeah.
Ryan seems to like you too. Let's stay together like this. It was a calm, adult-like proposal. A few months later, after formally informing his son, we decided on a place to live together and registered our marriage. Being older, we didn't have a wedding ceremony. Instead, we held a few celebratory meals with close friends. It was impossible to keep our marriage a secret from our colleagues at work, and they were quite surprised. Meanwhile, the colleagues who admired me also gave us gifts, to avoid any mix-up of personal and professional lives. Nick and I were transferred to different departments, but it wasn't a big issue. Both of us continued to work in our new departments. Thus began our new life, and before we knew it, a year had passed. There were no significant changes in our lives, it was entirely peaceful. Perhaps the only thing was that Nick's job had suddenly become busier. He had moved to a different department, so I didn't know the details. But it seemed like he had more late nights and business trips than before. I had heard that his department was already busy, and perhaps getting married had motivated him to work harder. I kept stocked meals in containers in the fridge so he could eat anytime. Then, one day, Ryan, Nick's son, came to our house with his girlfriend. It seemed they were considering marriage, and he wanted to introduce her to us. The girlfriend, Sarah, was 26 years old and worked in the same company as Ryan. Sarah had a charming and sincere demeanor, always smiling beautifully. It was understandable why she was irresistible to many, and I liked her immediately. Apparently, Ryan was quite popular at work. And he had also received a lot of attention from female colleagues. They ended up together after a bit of a contest. And though their colleagues were a bit envious, they blessed their marriage. It's so wonderful that you and Nick got married even at an older age. To fall in love and become partners at this stage in life is just beautiful. When I explained our situation, she showed a bright, flower-like smile and said those words. "Oh, stop it, you're making me blush." But yes, even at this age, life goes on. I thought being with him would make me happy. I said it to hide my embarrassment, but it ended up sounding more like boasting, making me blush even more. Sarah just smiled warmly at me. Trying not to say anything unnecessary, I hastily took a sip from my coffee cup. Ryan and Nick silently watched us. "Have you talked about the wedding yet?" I asked casually. "Well, not in detail yet." Seeing his hesitant reply, I realized they might not have discussed it thoroughly. Perhaps I was pushing the conversation too quickly. It was their matter, after all, and they should consider it at their own pace. As I reflected on this, Sarah jokingly said, "Well, it would be nice to have it in Hawaii." "Just kidding." She chuckled immediately. It was clear she was joking, trying to lighten the mood, and I found her attempt endearing. "Come on, Hawaii is definitely out of reach." Ryan objected, and Sarah responded, "I know, it was just a wishful joke. As long as our wedding is memorable, I'm happy with anything," she said humbly and took a sip of the coffee I had made. As the time passed pleasantly, Ryan and Sarah eventually left. It's great that Ryan is getting such a wonderful wife. You must be relieved, right? Back at home with just my husband, I spoke as he looked at his smartphone.
Yeah.
Well, if he's happy, that's what matters, he replied nonchalantly. It felt like a detached response, but considering they were grown men, father and son, this level of interaction seemed natural. After all, it was their marriage, and their happiness was what mattered most. By the way, about that joke Sarah made about wanting a wedding in Hawaii. She said it was a joke, but maybe she really dreams about it.
Yeah.
She did say that. But with Ryan's salary, it's impossible. I've already paid for his college tuition, so I can't afford to pay for a wedding as well. Then, I'll contribute the money, I stated. It must have been hard to support a son through college on a single income. Unlike him, I didn't have children and had plenty of savings. Besides, I earned more than my husband due to my higher position. Ryan was a neat and impressive young man. And his fiancée Sarah was a wonderful woman who wouldn't embarrass anyone. I was determined to help celebrate their marriage. Really? Are you sure? He looked surprised, raising his eyes from the smartphone screen he had been staring at. Really, though I'm only considering covering the venue cost for now. We'll think about other expenses, like travel for the guests and Sarah's dress later. But Sarah's willingness to express her dreams, even in jest to fit in, somehow makes her seem so endearing. I think it would make a good memory for Ryan too. What do you think? Tears welled up in Nick's eyes as he responded, overwhelmed with emotion. I think he'll be really happy. Are you sure about this? Thank you. I won't forget this favor. Oh, don't be so dramatic. I don't have children of my own. So perhaps I'm just getting carried away, thinking of them as if they were my own. After making light of the situation, I immediately contacted them to get their consent. Ryan was speechless with surprise. And his fiancée Sarah was initially shocked but soon burst into tears of joy, repeatedly thanking us. The following week, we met in person to discuss the arrangements and budget for the wedding. The venue we chose was a warm building surrounded by Hawaii's natural beauty, complete with a chapel that beautifully incorporated the sunlight, giving it a luxurious atmosphere. The number of guests was limited. But since they had planned to have a small ceremony with only close friends and family, it was not a problem to be able to have a wedding in such a wonderful place. I don't even know how to thank you. I'll be grateful for a lifetime. Her earnest demeanor made me smile. Beside her, Ryan seemed a bit out of sorts, occasionally glancing at his phone and giving distracted responses. Although the dream of a wedding is often stronger for women, I hoped the reality would sink in for him as the date approached. While Sarah and I primarily drove the wedding preparations, I started to notice something unsettling. Sorry, can you lend me some money for just a little while? My husband began asking to borrow money more frequently. We lived together and had agreed to split living expenses. But he was struggling to meet his share and kept asking for loans. You didn't even pay last month's utility bills, I covered most of it. It's not like you earn so little. Work's been really busy lately, and I've had a lot of meals out and socializing. Section chiefs make less than directors, you know. His remark, laden with resentment even in his position of asking for favors, made me uncomfortable. Stop wasting money then. And let's not bring company ranks into our home life. I handed him a small amount of cash, about $200. He took it with a look of dissatisfaction and stuffed it into his pocket before heading out. Lately, something was off with Nick. It wasn't just about the money, his overall attitude toward me was becoming increasingly indifferent. We used to never run out of things to talk about when we were dating. But now our conversations at home have significantly decreased. He mostly responded with half-hearted acknowledgments. And we rarely shared meals together anymore. The meals I stored in the fridge for him often went untouched for days. Though we were both of an age where work could get busy, the loneliness was becoming harder to bear. Pushing aside these unresolved feelings, I focused on helping my son and his fiancée with their wedding preparations and dove into my work. A significant new client project had just started. I have to work hard. As the months passed quickly, the wedding day was drawing near. The project with the new client was successfully contracted, and we were moving forward with the actual transactions. The wedding preparations were also formally progressing. Then one day, I received an email from Sarah wanting to meet and discuss something important. Assuming it was about the wedding, I suggested a day off for our meeting, and she quickly replied. On a busy holiday, the city buzzed with couples and families. It was transitioning from spring to summer, and some were already in short sleeves. In a calm cafe with soft music playing, Sarah appeared troubled. A stark contrast to her usual cheerful self during our wedding planning discussions. I'm sorry for calling you out suddenly. It's okay. What's going on? Is there something troubling you about the wedding? I asked, but she shook her head. As our coffees arrived, she took a sip to calm herself. It's about Ryan. I think he might be cheating. My heart skipped a beat. Her expression was fraught with worry, and even her usually glossy hair seemed lackluster today. What's going on? Try to calm down and explain. She nodded and unlocked her phone. This is his Instagram. On the days we don't see each other, there are always posts of him going out, always with the same woman in the pictures. And it seems they've been messaging too. The phone showed various photos of Ryan enjoying himself at different locations, a campsite, a store, with various people, but as she pointed out, the same woman appeared in many of them. Some photos showed them close together, and the comments on the posts hinted at something deeper. Pressing a finger to my forehead, I thought for a moment. I'm sorry. This alone isn't enough to accuse him of cheating, right? But she's a mutual acquaintance of ours, and their interaction is too intimate. Plus, he cancelled our plans last minute on my birthday, and then there was a photo of him with her. Her voice trembled as she spoke, tears welling up in her eyes, which she dabbed with a small hand. Indeed, this wasn't enough to conclusively call it cheating, but it warranted a thorough fact check. Thorough fact-checking is necessary. At the same time, it's deeply dishonest for him to leave his fiancée in the lurch, while boldly gallivanting around with another woman. Seeing Sarah tremble with anxiety before me is heart-wrenching. While I restrain my urge to immediately comfort her, I speak in a calm voice. Right, we can't be sure just from this. But I can't ignore your worries. If you're anxious, it might be worth getting a proper investigation done. I'll help you with that. When I spoke, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Really? I'm so sorry to trouble you with all this. But when I thought of someone older and trustworthy I could talk to, I immediately thought of you, Grace. It was nice to hear her say that. A wave of affection surged up within me, almost making me want to hug her. Afterward, I told her that I would look for a reputable investigation firm and get back to her. And then I left the cafe. As I watched her walk back to her home, my phone rang. It was from my husband. Hey, it's already noon. Where's lunch? Hearing his first words made me sigh involuntarily. At some point, it had become a given for me to handle all the cooking, even though he had lived alone before our marriage. Now, he wouldn't even prepare a single meal on the weekends. I checked the time, and indeed, it was just before noon. I'll buy something on my way home, so please wait. I also need to stop by the bank, so it will take some more time. I responded. Since there wouldn't be enough time to cook after getting home, I decided to buy some delicious prepared food nearby for lunch. My husband seemed displeased, but I also wanted a break from cooking, and I liked the prepared food from that place. As promised to Sarah, I narrowed down the choices for the investigation firm and contacted her. After she agreed on one, I decided to make the arrangements on her behalf. Months passed, and with only 2 months left until the wedding, Ryan happened to be visiting our house as he was nearby. Though I was concerned about Sarah's suspicions of infidelity, it wasn't appropriate to confront that issue in this setting, so I chose to act calmly. The dinner table was quiet, with only Nick and Ryan discussing their work a little, accompanied by salmon in cream sauce and a Chinese-style salad with summer vegetables. The food was quietly consumed without anyone saying it was delicious or offering thanks. I tried to lighten the mood by bringing up a cheerful topic. Hey, isn't the wedding just 2 months away? I'm looking forward to it. I need to think about what to wear. It was just a casual remark. However, at that moment, the atmosphere at the dining table shifted completely. Ryan's face contorted suddenly. Are you planning to come to our wedding? Don't joke around. I don't want a fake mother there. His sudden outburst left me in shock. It felt as if time had stopped, my breath and heartbeat seemed to pause. He stood up angrily, his face red and trembling as he ranted. I absolutely hate the idea of some tired old hag who isn't even my real mom showing up as a parent at my wedding. Just the thought of introducing her to my friends makes me sick. Not content with just shouting, he grabbed a plate of food and slammed it onto the table. The well-cooked cream sauce splattered, dirtying the table and floor. Wait. There's no need to be so angry. I understand you don't want me at the wedding. But please, stop talking like that. And don't waste the food. I managed to respond. His words had indeed hurt me. I was not recognized as a family member by him. Moreover, being internally mocked as a tired old hag was like being stabbed with a needle. But perhaps that's just the way it is. For him, I am nothing more than his father's remarried partner who appeared after he was grown up. It's natural that he wouldn't call me mother. However, such rough behavior is too much. But that damn old woman earns money. She even paid for our wedding. I heard you went to the bank today. You've already transferred the money for the venue, right? If you've paid, I have no further use for you. As he spat those words, he flipped over the salad bowl as well. The dining table was a mess, and I felt suffocated by the situation. Right, Dad? You agree, right? We'll invite you to the wedding. But there's no way we're introducing this hag as your new wife, right? He looked to his father for agreement, a scornful smile on his face.
Yeah.
That's fine. If she comes, she'll just dull the sparkle of the festive ceremony. Besides, if you had a new mom, you'd want her to be beautiful, right? My husband agreed, chuckling along. I was shocked as if I had been struck on the head. I nearly dropped the dishes I was picking up. Why would my husband say such a thing? What was all the time we spent together, building a relationship through work, really worth? She's a sales director with a high salary, so I thought marrying her would make for a good life. Thanks to her, we're not short on money, and you're getting a wedding in Hawaii with her money. Man, things have worked out well. Indeed, I manage one of the more profitable sales departments at the company, earning a substantial salary and bonus. Honestly, it's more than enough for one person to live on. But I remarried because I wanted to be with him. I loved him. Yet, all his smiles and words to me were lies, and I was just a convenient source of money. The room went dark, and I struggled to hold back tears. I knew crying would only lead to more ridicule from them. I understand. I won't attend the wedding. But your words are too harsh. I said quietly, asked them to leave the living room, and then cleaned up the messy dining table. Afterward, I remembered that I needed to contact Sarah about something, so I took care of that. Having seen the true nature of my late-life husband and his son, my heart continued to ache. What should I do next? I found it hard to sleep, and before I knew it, 2 months had passed. The day of my stepson's wedding had arrived. Since I was told not to come to the wedding, I decided to stay home without making any preparations. My husband and son had already left for Hawaii a few days ago and were not at home. I was eating a late breakfast when suddenly, my phone started ringing insistently. It was from my husband. I didn't feel like answering, so I just stared at the screen for a while. But he kept calling, so I reluctantly pressed the call button. What the hell is going on? Do your job properly, you ugly woman. Suddenly subjected to such low-level verbal abuse, I felt a wave of dizziness from the astonishment. My husband's angry voice continued from the other end of the phone. At the reception of the wedding venue, they said that $60,000 is still unpaid. You were in charge of the transfer, weren't you? What are you going to do about this? He was angry but also sounded panicked. And no wonder. After a flight of over 10 hours to get all the way to Hawaii, they found that their names were not on the list at the wedding venue. And the same was true for all the guests. It was natural for them to panic. However, my heart was as calm as still water. Yes, that sounds about right. Then, I crafted a smile on my lips and looked forward. At that moment, my eyes met with the person sitting across the dining table. Did you cancel it on purpose? Stop messing around. From the other side of the phone, I could hear the voices of a frantic woman complaining near my husband, and the murmurs of Ryan and the guests. It seemed the scene was quite chaotic. I wouldn't have expected you to go, especially since Ryan and Sarah have broken up. I'm the one who's surprised. Shut up. I wasn't told about any cancellation, so of course I would use it. Nothing was of course. His words were nonsensical. The outburst from my husband seemed to be audible to the person sitting across from me. That person, with a wry smile, nodded at me. That person was Sarah, who was supposed to get married today. She had come to my house early this morning to spend the day together. A few months after Sarah approached me about Ryan's infidelity, an investigation agency confirmed he indeed was cheating. They captured photos of him dating the woman Sarah had mentioned, and entering hotels with her. She was devastated and cried her heart out, but decided after a week that she could no longer be with him. She told me so. At the same time, I had also commissioned an investigation on my husband, who was increasingly absent from home due to business trips and overtime, while constantly asking for money despite his managerial salary. It turned out he was cheating as well. His attitude towards me had become increasingly dismissive. And while I had suspected something, I never imagined there was another woman. It turned out the reason he was always short on money was that he had been lavishly spending on expensive bags and jewelry for her. Sharing our grievances and troubles, Sarah and I couldn't simply forgive and forget. We conspired and planned this together. Indeed, I had booked the wedding venue Sarah suggested and initially made the payment. However, after confirming Ryan and my husband's infidelity and Sarah had sorted out her feelings, I cancelled the booking. And we decided to keep that fact from the two men. The day Ryan had thrown a tantrum at our dining table, declaring, "Old hag shouldn't come," the wedding had already been called off. And Sarah had broken up with Ryan 2 weeks before the supposed wedding day. She confronted him with all the evidence of his cheating and spoke to him firmly. Ryan easily admitted to his infidelity and ended their relationship with a cutting remark. Surprisingly, Ryan, perhaps thinking it convenient, had planned to turn the planned wedding with Sarah into one with his affair partner. Fortunately, since most of the guests were mutual acquaintances, there was no need to reissue invitations. Now, Ryan, his affair partner, my husband, and the guests had arrived at the location but were panicking because they couldn't enter the venue. From the sounds of it, my husband was quite agitated, and Sarah could hear him clearly, responding with a sardonic smile. To switch partners for a wedding immediately after breaking up with Sarah. What kind of nerve do you have? And about your cheating, I've got all the proof I need. When you come back, we're proceeding with a divorce and I'll be claiming compensation. I stated matter-of-factly, and I sensed my husband gasp on the other end. What? My cheating? That's not relevant now. After being treated like nothing but a wallet and being exploited to the limit, I've had enough. Enjoy being lost in Hawaii for all I care. With that, I ended the call. Your husband seemed quite troubled. Sarah smirked mischievously across from me. He's just reaping what he sowed, I firmly declared and downed my cup of coffee. Afterward, I prepared a slightly elaborate lunch to comfort Sarah. We shared paella and quiche, discussing everything that had happened. Although we were years apart in age, the time spent together as two women passed delightfully quickly. And we ended up laughing together, holding our stomachs. What became of them in Hawaii, I do not know. Probably, they had to apologize profusely to the venue and spend a lot of time bowing their heads to the guests they had inconvenienced. What state they would return home, I wondered. 2 days later, when my husband and Ryan returned home, They were exactly as furious as I imagined. You damn old woman, stop screwing around. Ryan kicked over his briefcase at the entrance. You've made us look like fools. Do you have any idea how much apologizing we had to do to everyone we invited? My husband bellowed, his face turning a demonic red. However, I remain unflustered, calmly stating, after working in turbulent times, I became the first female manager in the company. And there was no way I could succumb to the intimidation of such men. It's your own fault for not even checking with the venue or the planner once. Especially you, Ryan. It was your wedding, yet you didn't even send a courtesy message beforehand. If you had been properly engaged, you would have noticed something was amiss. Are you saying this is our fault? My husband stepped forward as if he was about to grab me. But the era of working relentlessly and becoming the first female executive in the company had made me too strong to be intimidated by such threats. In that moment, I thrust a file containing photos of the infidelity evidence right in front of my husband. Isn't it you who's in the wrong? It's amazing, really. Pretending to be busy with work, you were actually frolicking with a younger woman. And it seems you've been involved with her since around the time we got married. How did you get your hands on this? I had it investigated, along with Ryan's infidelity. Saying that, I glanced towards the back of the hallway. Sarah, her lips pursed and face set hard, walked directly from the back. I had called her over in advance, knowing we'd have this confrontation when they returned. When I broke up with him, I showed him the evidence of his infidelity. During that investigation, we also looked into Nick's activities. You two, always doing whatever you want. You ugly, rich old hag, just keep your money. I dated Sarah because she was the most popular at work. But she was so boring I got tired of her immediately. It's all my business. His vitriol was the last straw that broke my composure. In the next moment, an unexpectedly loud voice burst from me. Do you have any idea how much your business has hurt Sarah and me? This was the real deal from a female executive. My intensity left Nick and Ryan stunned into silence. Taking advantage of this, Sarah turned on her heel. Let's sit down and talk, both of you. She spoke calmly and led the way. We sat around the living room table, the two men sitting across with their faces turned away. So you admit to the infidelity? I started the conversation. Admit? With these photos coming out, I have no choice. He seemed completely resigned. Right. Before the wedding, you revealed that you married me for money. That's right, I thought it was a good one because you were a close woman. You had money, and you could cook. The money is for you to play with the younger ones when I want to. Okay. I'm recording this conversation, so your admission is solid. I showed him the screen of my smartphone, which was set to voice recorder. Nick glared at me, then slumped back in his chair, resigned. I proceeded with my claim for compensation for the infidelity and mental anguish I endured. The amount, as advised by my lawyer, was about $50,000. And the documents were already prepared. For Ryan, I also demanded compensation for the wedding venue cancellation fees. I will also be claiming damages from you. Next, it was Sarah's turn to speak. We were engaged. Even in an engagement, you can claim damages for infidelity. Since our breakup was due to your infidelity, my claim is all the more valid. She presented him with the documents. The amount was about $20,000. Crazy, what are you saying? We weren't even married, how can there be damages for infidelity before marriage? I consulted a lawyer and prepared these documents. Your infidelity deeply hurt me, and the broken engagement caused trouble for my family. You will definitely be paying these damages. Sarah spoke firmly. I don't want to pay. Why should I pay someone who earns more than me? He was still not convinced, refusing the claim with absurd reasoning. Ryan chimed in. I don't want to either. We suffered enough in Hawaii, and now you want us to pay money too. How can I afford such an amount before we're even married? The discussion continued, but the two men stubbornly refused to pay, leading nowhere. I closed my eyes, thought for a moment, and decided to play my last card. You've been lying to me from the start, haven't you? I said this, and my husband frowned. Perhaps he had a guilty conscience, or maybe he simply didn't remember. I calmly continued to speak. While investigating the infidelity, I also learned about your past. You told me your previous wife died in an accident, but that's not true, is it? His eyes widened in shock. They were bloodshot, a clear sign of his disturbance. You've always had a problem with fidelity. You divorced your previous wife because of your repeated cheating. It seems your company isn't aware of this, but if you continue to refuse our claims, I'll discuss this matter with your company's higher-ups. Threatening me, that's low. I'm still recording this conversation, so everything I've just said will be saved as evidence. What will you do? As I said this, Nick audibly sighed in frustration and threw himself back into the chair. All right, I get it. I'll pay if that's what it takes. And Ryan, hearing this, asked. Does that mean I also have to pay alimony if I don't want you to spill the beans about my mom? I retorted, of course. You were part of the lie, too. He then slumped back in his chair, mimicking his father. Men so greedy and full of excuses. Truly, like father, like son. After settling the claims for damages and securing a divorce agreement from my husband, I finished packing my bags to leave the house. Once everything was sorted, I left the house with my belongings. A few weeks later, I moved temporarily to an apartment, continuing my work as if nothing had happened. I kept my end of the bargain and didn't report his first wife's situation to his company. However, his past was eventually exposed. It turned out that a relative of the bride at the wedding venue knew his first wife, and accidentally overheard him lying about her supposed death. She felt guilty after the cancelled wedding fiasco, and ended up spreading the story through intermediaries to our company. The same tale reached Ryan's workplace as well. Such stories don't take long to spread, and both men were soon labeled as big liars within their respective workplaces. Both men, having significantly damaged their reputations within the company, and stressed by the gossip, seem to have been demoted to a less prestigious department with lower salaries. Sarah and I had also filed for compensation from our partner's affair partners. The woman Ryan had cheated with was a mutual acquaintance of Sarah's, and she must have known that he was engaged. After several discussions through lawyers, it was concluded that all the friends Ryan had invited to the wedding were mutual acquaintances and would have known about his relationship status. Similarly, Nick's affair partner had been repeatedly told by Nick that his wife was a boring woman who was all about her work and that he wanted to leave her to be with his mistress. These women knew that the men were married or engaged yet continued their affairs. So we prepared claims for damages against them, just as we did with our husbands, and sent them certified notices. The affair partners reacted furiously and promptly broke up with them. Especially Nick's mistress, who had been with him for the luxurious treats, discarded him once his money ran out. Ryan's affair partner, having abruptly announced they would marry only to find no wedding would take place, and the fact that her relationship with him was an affair came to light to her family, apparently received a treatment akin to disownment. She has since vanished from her job and social media, and no one knows of her whereabouts, though she continues to make small payments for the damages. Ryan's friends, who had nonchalantly accepted his infidelity and his switch of partners just before the wedding. One by one began facing problems in their careers and personal lives. Though the details are unclear, their fate as individuals lacking in common sense and ethics is not hard to imagine. Nick's mistress, raised in a wealthy family and working as a part-time office worker, was kicked out by her parents once the infidelity came to light. Unaccustomed to living alone, she now struggles to make ends meet with a low salary while trying to pay the damages. The luxury brand bags Nick had given her now seem out of place with her shabby appearance. Nick and Ryan, having lost me as their financial source and burdened with the damages, apparently continue to work in high-stress jobs that don't pay well considering the effort required. Ryan, having lost an easygoing girlfriend, now leads a joyless life, merely working long hours and sleeping. However, both are fortunate just to have avoided dismissal. Hopefully, they can recover their lives if they manage to quit their cheating and wasteful spending. I wonder what will happen as time passes. Actually, I've found a new boyfriend. At a newly opened, cozy cafe, holding a hot tea with both hands, Sarah smiles happily. She has since resigned from the same workplace as Ryan and is now thriving in a new environment. Intelligent and quick to learn, she quickly adapted to her new job and seems to be well regarded by her colleagues. Sarah and I keep in touch, and sometimes meet like this to talk. She is honest, cheerful, yet strong-willed, a kind of woman you want to root for. I think of her like a true daughter, sometimes listening to her, encouraging her, and even giving her small gifts on special occasions. Her new happiness makes me genuinely smile. Really? Congratulations. Yes. I met him through a friend. He's serious, and a great listener. We're already dating with marriage in mind. Her cheeks are as pink as the cherry blossoms blooming outside the window. That's wonderful. This time, I'm sure you'll be truly happy. You'll be fine. If you ever need to talk, I'm here. Thank you so much. I owe it to your support that I'm here today. So, please let me invite you to the wedding. Her delightful suggestion warms my heart. Despite everything that's happened, I'm sincerely glad for this connection. I take her hand and nod emphatically. Thank you. Truly, congratulations. Be happy. With my husband and son out of my life, I've taken up new hobbies like hiking and mountaineering on weekends. I've made more friends and am living a more fulfilled life than before. With a more relaxed mind, my performance at work has improved. The trust from my subordinates is strong, and I'm known as a calm and caring manager. Because my team is motivated, it makes my job as a manager easier. Everything seems to be moving in a very positive direction. I'll continue to stand tall and approach everything with sincerity. Being trusted this deeply by someone is such a joyful experience.